All right. We are back on with Curious Christianity, and today I have a special guest, David, who is going to help explain a couple of very, very difficult passages in the Bible. Revelation chapter 14 and Revelation chapter 20 are some of the strongest verses in support of what would normally be known as the traditional view of hell, and that would be eternal conscious torment. However, many Christians believe that the Bible actually teaches something known as conditional immortality or annihilationism. And so we're going to see an interpretation of these verses that perhaps could be used in favor of annihilationism. Many people believe that these verses just can't be. It's just impossible to interpret them any other way than eternal conscious torment. But sometimes what you know just isn't so. So with all of that, David, welcome to the channel.
All right, thanks, Adam. I appreciate you having me on the channel, and I'll do my best to try to live up to the intro. And with that, we'll just dive right in. So yeah, let me know if you can see my words on the screen there.
Yes, we will.
Okay, very
Prop
good.
this up and
all right, give me a holler when you got it.
Go.
Okay, very good.
It is right up there. First thing we see is we want to understand the smoke in Revelation 14.
Yeah, so Revelation 14:11, I mean, if you just give it a straight reading, in the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever. They have no rest day and night. Those who worship the beast in his image and whoever receives the mark of his name. This sounds like it conforms very much to an endless eternal torment view of hell. But one thing we want to take into account is that in Revelation, John frequently uses phrases and words from the Old Testament, sometimes from the Greek Old Testament Septuagint, sometimes from the Aramaic Targums that were circulating probably during Jesus' day and after that. And so we want to take into account that a lot of times John is pointing to material in those ancient Bibles, and he's trying to point us to explanations of what the wording means that he's using. So the first place we could probably go real obviously that this smoke ascending forever and ever is that it appears again in Revelation. There's a very long account or prophecy of the destruction of Babylon that will be coming in chapters 17 through 19. So here in verse 17, I'm just showing this to show that Babylon the Great is called the prostitute, okay? And then when we see in Revelation 19, that label of prostitute pops up again. So we know that Revelation 19 in this passage is also talking about Babylon. But the more pertinent point is you look here and you see the smoke again rising forever in Revelation 19, just as we see it in Revelation 14. So this clues us in that, maybe this account of Babylon's destruction, maybe we can learn something about this smoke that might also apply to Revelation 14 and its use of similar language. Okay, but we're not going to stop at this Babylon destruction account in Revelation 17 and 19. Something that's very revealing is that this account of the destruction of Babylon in Revelation 17 and 19 is also very highly connected to Jeremiah 51, believe it or not. And I'm going to call this the triangle of smoke because not only is it connected to Jeremiah 51, but it also has connections to Isaiah 34. So in order to show that this account of the destruction of Babylon and the smoke rising forever in Revelation is connected with Isaiah 34, I want to go through some things that are in my book, Hell is Made Holy. The book is available for free on my website, which is just my name, davidaaronbeaty.com. You can download it there as a free PDF. And I'm going to be working off that exact PDF that you can get from the website. And I'm going to be going to page 101. So what we basically see is this, I'm going to call it the triangle of smoke, but it's Jeremiah 51, Revelation 17 and 19, and Isaiah 34. All of these are very highly connected to one another by content and by phrases, and they all have the smoke, okay? And what we're expecting is that once we recognize that these three are forming this triangle, is that we can use all three of them to try to understand what this smoke is, and then in turn, our education on the smoke from these three will give us an education on the smoke rising in Revelation 14:11. So we're kind of going around the back of the barn, the long way, so to speak. But if we do this, you'll see it's very revealing about what this smoke is actually pertaining to. So first, I'm going to show the connections between these three that form the triangle. Okay. So I'm going to start with these items and just go through them. And in all three, there's a country which is being destroyed. In Revelation, it's Babylon. In Isaiah 34, it's Edom. And then in Jeremiah 51, it's also Babylon. So already we see a little bit of a connection, kind of loose, but a little bit of a connection. Okay. In Jeremiah and Isaiah 34, we have animal slaughter language. Jeremiah 51, I'll bring them down like lambs to the slaughter, like rams with male goats. This is saying this in the description of the destruction of Babylon in Jeremiah 51. Isaiah 34, Yahweh's sword is filled with blood. It is covered with fat, with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For Yahweh has a sacrifice in Basra. Basra is, I think, a city that is within Edom. So we're still in the context of Edom here. So it's a sacrifice in Basra and a great slaughter in the land of Edom. So we're starting to see a connection between Jeremiah 51 and Isaiah 34. Okay. So then as we move on to strengthen the connection between Revelation and the destruction of Babylon there and the destruction of Babylon in Jeremiah 51, both share the same language. The nations have drunk of her wine, therefore the nations have gone mad. Jeremiah 51. Revelation 17, those who dwell on the earth were made drunk with the wine of her sexual immorality. So again, this sexual immorality thing is hearkening to the prostitute symbolism that we saw before. Jeremiah 51, destruction of Babylon. You who dwell on many waters, abundant in treasures, your end has come. Okay. Again, Revelation 17, destruction of Babylon. Come here, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who sits on many waters. So again, it's the prostitute language, but both in Jeremiah 51 and in Revelation 17, she's on, she's associated with many waters. Okay. Going further, now we see actually more of a three-way parallelism here on this point. But Jeremiah 51, destruction of Babylon. Babylon will become heaps, a dwelling place for jackals, an astonishment, and a hissing without inhabitant. No son of man passes by it. Again, destruction of Babylon. Revelation 18, fallen is Babylon the Great, and she has become a habitation of demons, a prison of every unclean spirit, and a prison of every unclean and hateful bird. Isaiah 34, from generation to generation it will lie waste, no one will pass through it forever and ever, but the pelican and the porcupine will possess it, the owl and the raven will dwell in it. So you see in all three of these, you have a country being destroyed, Edom or Babylon, and you have animals coming in to live in the desolate place afterwards. Jeremiah 51, the destruction of Babylon, and Revelation 18, again, the destruction of Babylon. We see that God's invitation to his people starts with the same phrase. Jeremiah 51:45 says, "Come out from her midst, my people, and each of you save yourselves from the fierce anger of the Lord." Revelation 18, "Come out of her, my people, that you have no participation in her sins and that you don't receive of her plagues." So you see what John is doing. He's tying his destruction of Babylon in Revelation with the destruction of Babylon in Jeremiah 51. He's intentionally using the same phrases, the same content to show you that these are related. And of course, this is also connected to Revelation 14:11 with the smoke going up. In Revelation, we have in destruction of Babylon, we have the smoke going up forever. In Jeremiah 51, we'll also see there's something that very much, very strongly implies smoke going up. And then also in Isaiah 34, the smoke is going up. So in all four of these, Revelation 14, the smoke is going up. Isaiah 34, the smoke is going up forever. Jeremiah 51, the smoke is going up. On and on. They're all four of them are all have this smoke going up as a centerpiece. I mean, we just keep going with these. I mean, Jeremiah 51, then the heavens and the earth and all that is therein will sing for joy over Babylon, for the destroyers will come to her from the north, says Yahweh. Going back to Revelation, rejoice over her, O heaven, you saints, apostles, and prophets, for God has judged your judgment on her. So we have rejoicing or joy over the destruction of Babylon in both. Here again, I think I'm going to summarize some of these, but we have Babylon will sink like a stone at its destruction. That's mentioned in both Revelation 18 and Jeremiah 51. There's a connection with the dead bodies. Dead bodies are lying around everywhere in both Babylon and Edom in Jeremiah 51 and Isaiah 34. It's called the day of God's vengeance in Jeremiah 51 and Isaiah 34. So over and over and over again, John is sharing the language of these three triangle of smoke. I'm gonna call them Isaiah 34, Jeremiah 51, Revelation 17 and 19. He's pulling them together just like in a way that you can't miss this. And then again, the details of the destruction in both Isaiah 34 and Jeremiah 51 are recorded or associated with a book. So once we get to the end of this, we can say these are definitely related to one another. And whatever we learn about this smoke in these three relates to what the smoke is doing in Revelation 14. So we have kind of like a body of text now, which we can use to work off of. So with that assumption, we're going to go back and we're going to do just that. So as I mentioned before, Revelation 14 points us to, it has the smoke going up. Revelation 17 through 19 also has the smoke going up. We have the connection then. Okay, so now let's study the smoke in these passages. Jeremiah 51. I'll just read this off. We applied healing to Babylon, but she was not healed. Abandon her and let's each go to his own country, for her judgment has reached to heaven and it rises to the clouds. What does that sound like? That sounds like smoke. It probably is. Okay, I'll go on. When they become heated up, I will serve them their banquet and make them drunk, so that they may rejoice in triumph and may sleep a perpetual sleep and not wake up, declares the Lord. That sounds like very annihilationist, by the way. Sleeping a perpetual sleep and never waking up. That sounds like what Jesus says in Matthew 10:28. He says, be afraid of him who can destroy both body and soul in Gehenna or hell. But so as we look at what could be smoke here, her judgment reached the heaven and rises to the clouds. We see that this smoke is associated with sacrifice language. I will bring them down like lambs to the slaughter, like rams together with male goats. So we have our first hint here that maybe this is talking about smoke here, rising to the clouds in the heavens, and maybe it's the smoke of sacrifices. This isn't super clear, pointing to what I'm saying, but maybe just a hint. So let's then go over to another one of our verses that is in this triangle of smoke, so to speak. And we see again in Isaiah 34:10, it says, its smoke will go up forever or go up forever. From generation to generation, it will be desolate. None will pass through it forever and ever. Now I'm going to do a special maneuver here. Let's look at Isaiah 34 instead in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which has a textual variant. In other words, this ancient manuscript in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the wording is a little bit altered versus what's in our modern Bibles, and which our modern Bibles correspond to the popular Hebrew Masoretic text, which is probably the most popular version of the Hebrew Bible. Okay, but I'm going to show in my book Hell is Made Holy that this version in the Dead Sea Scrolls of Isaiah 34 also there's a lot of evidence that this was a reading or a version of this passage which John's ancient audience of Revelation would very likely have had access to. It exists potentially in the Septuagint, and I'm trying to remember in even the Hebrew Masoretic text. Depending on how it's read, and I know that's not going to mean much for a lot of people, but the Hebrew Masoretic text, which underlies our Bibles, can also be translated in such a way that it also agrees with this Dead Sea Scrolls version of Isaiah 34. So let's look in this and see what the smoke is associated with here in this Dead Sea Scrolls version of the verse. Okay, I'm just going to read it off. For the Lord is angry against all the nations and furious at all their host. He has doomed them and has determined that they be slaughtered. More sacrifice language. They're slain and their corpses will be cast down and their stench will rise up. The mountains will be soaked with their blood. The Lord has a sword filled with blood, gorged with fat, with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of rams, kidneys. Indeed, the Lord has a sacrifice in Bozrah. So right now it's very overt. It's not making you guess anymore. This is a sacrifice. So the Lord has a sacrifice in Bozrah and a great slaughter in the land of Edom. The wild oxen will fall with them and the young bulls with the mighty steers. Their land will be drunk with blood and their soil saturated with fat. It will burn night and day and will never be extinguished. Its smoke will go up from generation to generation. So what I show in the book Hell is Made Holy is that all this language has very clear and overt connections with the sacrificial system in the Old Testament. I mean, the language itself reveals this. I mean, it says it's a sacrifice, but there's a lot more evidence to show that all this language here that I'm underlining has very clear connections with the Old Testament sacrificial system. Okay, this for the first parts of it here in verses 2, 3, 6, it's very obvious, and 7. But once we get it down here to verse 10, we may not be so familiar with this. It'll burn night and day, never be extinguished. Its smoke will go up from generation to generation. This language, like I said, it's not as obvious, but if you study the Old Testament sacrificial system, there was a sacrifice called I call it, and it's got various names, but just to be very clear, the way I refer to it is the continual morning and evening regular sacrifice. And it's variously referred to as the continual sacrifice or the morning and evening sacrifice, or sometimes as the burnt offering. Different people writing about it in different ways. And also the Bible will use different one of those terms to refer to the sacrifice. So it was a sacrifice that, guess what? The fire burned night and day. Okay. The Israelites were commanded never to let it be extinguished, never let it go out, okay? And the smoke or the sacrifice, let's say, the sacrifice was to be continual for all their generations, okay? So once we see those connections, we can recognize that not just some of this overt language here is sacrifice language, but even when we get down into verse 10, we could very reasonably understand this to be a continuation of the sacrifice language in the previous verses. Okay. So that has big implications for what this Isaiah 34 means, but also big implications for what the smoke means in general, the smoke as it appears in Revelation 14, Revelation 17:19 in the destruction of Babylon, Jeremiah 51, where we saw up here where the what is this rising to the heavens and the clouds? So once we recognize this connection between the continual morning and evening regular sacrifice, now we're dealing with a symbolism that involves complete and total destruction to the point of ashes. The sacrifices were burned on the altar. The ashes were carried outside the camp and deposited, and there was nothing left of the animal. So if John is using that symbolism here in Revelation 14, we don't have him using symbolism of an endless torment. it's complete what he's referring to. If the connection that I'm describing is correct, he's referring to a symbolism of complete and utter destruction to the point of ashes, which big coincidence, that also the ashes and the wicked being turned to ashes also turns up several more times in the scripture in relation to the judgment of the wicked. It's in Malachi. I can't remember. It's in my book. You'll see it if you pick up the book. So we have a symbolism which it just doesn't fit the traditional view of hell. Okay, so I'm relying on the Dead Sea Scrolls at least in part, but I show a lot of the evidence in the book that the Dead Sea Scrolls version that I just read from, and specifically, it's important to note that this verse 10 right here, this is what is different in the Dead Sea Scrolls reading, or a reading like it from the Septuagint and the Masoretic text. This part is what's different. Okay, so this is the language we have here. Is very overtly connected. You can tell the content is similar to the continual morning and evening regular sacrifice. But in the translation, the way we translate it today, here's the verse here. It more connects with the way John quotes it. But John very likely knew that his audience would have had the other reading. He would have known that they would have also been aware of this version when he quotes it. Because like I said, the Masoretic text, the Septuagint, and the Dead Sea Scrolls can all be translated like this, and not as an alternate reading to this. So John would very likely have known his audience had access to this overt language describing, associating the smoke going up with the continual morning and evening regular sacrifice and the rest of this sacrifice language. So I go into those connections even deeper. There's another video which you could pick up if you wanted, if you don't want to read the book, if you want a very abbreviated form of it. You could look at the video by this title, interview with author David Aaron Beaty, Conditional, Immortality, Annhilationism, and Hell. So you could look up this, and it's on this YouTube channel here. You may have to put this in the search bar in order to get the video, or you could, type that all in there. But the @ handle will take you right to a YouTube channel much easier. This gets more overt though. What I just described, I was trying to make a connection between the smoke and the sacrificial system. If we look at Jeremiah 51, again, we read it before, and I pointed out her judgment has reached to heaven and it rises to the clouds. Okay. Hey, Adam, can I get a sound check, or am I still being broadcast? I just want to make sure I haven't heard from anybody.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, perfect.
You're good. In fact, you're good. So,
okay, cool. So
yeah, and let me reiterate one of your points, since
sure.
One of the comments has come in. The primary point, one of the aspects here, is you're kind of trying to make the connection and show that annihilation is really one of the more plausible interpretations of these passages. And because many people, they would say this, right? And I feel like this is a good audience point, right? Is that most people, when they read this, if the smoke goes up forever and ever, that must mean that eternal conscious torment is the only legitimate way to interpret this passage. That's the mindset and view,
right,
of several others.
Yeah. So, what the other part, that's a good for clarification. The other part of what I'm asserting is that if you look at the continual morning and evening regular sacrifice, okay, its smoke was virtually forever. The way that the Israelites were commanded to do it is they would see that smoke going up from generation to generation, constantly, from the continual morning and evening regular sacrifice. And that sacrifice and the smoke associated with it would have been a symbol of basically God having, and it says this, it tells you what it means. It actually interprets the sacrifice for you and tells you what it represents. And the end of Exodus 29. And it's basically, it represents deliverance from evil, being rescued, being brought out of Egypt and rescued from Egypt, the defeat of a massive army. Okay, Pharaoh's army was drowned in the Red Sea, and also it represents the togetherness of God and His people. So guess what? Revelation 14, the entire book of Revelation, represents what? It represents the deliverance from evil. Okay, all evil is wiped out. God has come to dwell with His people, and He has defeated a massive army at Armageddon. So, to this point, John actually repeats the interpretation of the continual morning and evening sacrifice. He uses some of the content from that in Exodus 29 and puts it at the end of Revelation. So not only is he pointing to the continual morning and evening regular sacrifice, but when you get to the end, he's taking the interpretation of the sacrifice from Exodus 29 and moving the content of it right into Revelations. So it's all, so basically what I'm saying is the smoke going up forever and ever for the Israelites, it represented togetherness with God, deliverance from an evil army, and deliverance from the bondage to sin, which Egypt represented. Okay, so the smoke was a forever symbol. And what I'm saying is that John is repeating that here. He's saying, guys, the smoke is going up forever and ever again. Symbolically, in a symbolic sense, guys, here in Revelation, the smoke is going up forever and ever. You've been delivered from the evil army. You've been brought into the promised land. You are together with God now. And I believe that is John using symbolism to hearken back to the promise and the deliverance and the togetherness with God, which the continual morning and evening regular sacrifice represented to the Israelites for, hundreds and hundreds of years. So, but John strengthens it. Sure.
I wanted to make one of those connections because this is exactly it, right? Because right here, you have it right there. In Revelation 14, it ascends, what? Forever and ever, which is, in Greek, it's going to be that kind of aeons of aeons notion, right?
It is, yeah. It uses the compound. Actually, it uses aeon, aeons,
right.
Aeons, or ages, right here.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I just wanted to mention that because of how similar that sounds to Isaiah 34. Now, remember, of course, Isaiah is going to be in Hebrew, so it's not going to be exactly the same language. But when Isaiah says, for generation and generation, it's kind of a very similar notion of like, this is going to go on for forever, right? So it's just a little further down in your slide, right?
Yeah. So if you look in Isaiah 34,
right, he's got it right there, right?
In verse 10, well, it's like I said, the wording is a little bit. We'll point to it here. This one I think is a singular. I can't remember. I'm not going to say, but I think this is in the Greek Septuagint. This is one aeon. It says it's. Let's look at it real quick. We'll.
But then it says from generation to generation, right?
Let me. Well, you're getting into the very fine details of it at this point. That I show very well how it all stacks up in the book. I'll be honest with you. I mean, if we go into those details here, it's going to be. I'm not going to be able to cover them very well. I'm not going to be able to answer it very well.
Sure.
But I show it very clearly in the book. Like for instance, here's the verse Isaiah 34:10, and I'm trying to see if we have that's generations right there. And the smoke, I think, the smoke might be in the previous verse. Here, yeah, let's see. Or it might fall in the next one. I'm trying to. Oh, here it is. Yeah, so there it is. So it uses the word unto the age. Unto the age is what it's literally saying here. It's a singular. Okay, so in this verse here, it says the smoke will go up unto the age. Whereas John, and that's kind of reflective of the continual morning and evening regular sacrifice. It was only for an age. It's stopped now. So it was a symbol of God's deliverance and his togetherness with his people for an age. Okay, but once we get to Revelation, it's no longer for an age. The smoke now, I think the way John is using it is he's saying now this smoke that was to an age in the Septuagint is now unto the ages. He's multiplying it by compounding the two words together. And I think this is the best representation of endlessness that we can get using these Greek words in that compound ages. So I guess what I'm saying is John is pulling in the symbolism from the continual morning and evening regular sacrifice, but he's extending it out. He's saying the smoke now, the symbolism now has an endless meaning. It's no longer for just an age. But yeah, when you go from the Masoretic text, or let's say the most common translation of the Masoretic text, over to the Dead Sea Scrolls version, the words get kind of, the way that they're read kind of gets reshuffled, and the generations apply to the smoke going up, as you can see here. Mm-hmm. And the forever, unto the age, then applies to the lying waste unto the age. So I guess what I'm saying is that, and you'll see this, I explain this in detail in the book, but the each action, this is a string of actions here in starting in verse, well, it would be the previous verse 9, but there's a string of actions that have each action, you have burning and be extinguished and smoke go up and lie waste. Each one of these actions has an adverb or an adverbial phrase associated with it. For the burning night and day here, it's burning is modified by the adverb night and day. Be extinguished is modified by the adverb never. Smoke going up is modified by generation to generation. So each action has an adverb or an adverbial phrase connected with it, describing the duration. Okay, but if you translate it the other way, each adverbial phrase gets pushed, I can't remember, back or forward to the action that is adjacent in the list of actions. So you can see here the smoke. See, forever now, and this gets pushed to the smoke going up. Okay, it lying, the generation to generation gets pushed to it being desolate. You see what I'm saying? And then the forever and ever gets pushed to none will pass. So that's the difference between the two passages, is the adverbs and the actions are getting shifted. And I show with the backing of scholarship, and I'm not a scholar, but with the backing of scholarship, how that can happen depending on how you translate the verse. Okay, so I mean, I'm just touching. I hope that's enough to kind of like satisfy just a little bit of what you were trying to mention as far as the difference between these two. I mean, did I make any progress there?
Yeah, I'm just trying to say, like, both the passages very much have the general idea of its kind of perpetual nature. And I know it's the language isn't identical, but I think they kind of get at it. Now, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more towards, so because part of what you just pointed out was Isaiah, or Revelation 14 is talking about something that is for forever, right?
Well, what I'm asserting is that the smoke rising forever and ever is a symbol, which really
Right.
does not have a literal fulfillment. Okay, the smoke's not going to be rising endlessly, but that John is trying to make the statement that the results, that the symbolism or the meaning of this Old Testament forever rising smoke, the meaning of the Old Testament smoke is now transferred to Revelation, and the meaning and significance and the result is what goes on forever and ever. So it's as if the smoke is there reminding us forever and ever that God has delivered us from evil. He's come to dwell with us. he's defeated the wicked army, he's killed Satan, and that in some symbolic sense the smoke rises up forever and ever, and the results of these things will, and what the smoke represents, will be endless. So not that it's actual forever smoke, but that the meaning of the symbolism and the fulfillment of the symbolism will go on forever and ever. In other words, the smoke will be gone, but God will have forever and ever delivered us. He will forever and ever be with us. He will forever and ever have completed the extinction of the evil army, Satan, the unsaved, the Antichrist, and the beast. So that's
So in
the summary of the what I believe John is trying to communicate with this symbolism.
So instead of perpetual torment, it's really about the definiteness and permanentness of the enemy's defeat. That they are completely and utterly defeated, and that will stand for forever. Never will it be overturned.
I believe so. Let me read. I'll read real quick. Exodus 29, the end of it. Okay, so it's way to the end. Okay, now this is what you shall offer on the altar. Now this is the continual morning and evening regular sacrifice. It's the thing that causes the smoke to go up forever, or translated as literally as an age or forever. Okay, in Isaiah 34, and then you'll see similar words. Even the word olam, forever, in Hebrew is used in the Old Testament to describe the continual morning and evening regular sacrifice. Okay, so now this is what you shall offer on the altar: 2 one-year-old lambs each day, continuously. There's that word. The one you shall offer in the morning, and the other lamb you shall offer at twilight. And there should be 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/4 of a hin of beaten oil, and 1/4 of a hin of wine for a drink offering with 1 lamb. The other lamb you shall offer at twilight. So it's day and night. The other lamb you shall offer at twilight, and shall offer with it the same grain offering and the same drink offering as in the morning, for a soothing aroma and an offering by fire to the Lord. It shall be a continual burnt offering throughout your generations at the doorway of the tent of meeting. That's where the altar was. At the doorway of the tent of meeting before the Lord, where I'll meet with you to speak to you there. I will meet there with the sons of Israel, and it should be consecrated by my glory. I will consecrate the tent of meeting and the altar. I will also consecrate Aaron and his sons to serve as priests to me. So this is the first hint that we have of the togetherness of God's people. It says that we are the priest in the New Testament. So this is the first hint of togetherness of God and his people. So Aaron and his sons to serve as priests for me, and I will dwell among the sons of Israel and be their God. That's what you see in Revelation. Jesus comes and he begins to dwell on earth at the beginning of the millennium in Revelation. So I will dwell among the sons of Israel, and I will be their God, and they shall know that I am the Lord their God who brought them out of the land of Egypt. So there it is. There's the deliverance that I was mentioning. They're brought out of the land of Egypt. Same thing happens in Revelation. You'll see that there's a repeated theme throughout end times prophecy of the people of Israel being gathered together, brought out of the diaspora where they've been scattered, brought into the promised land again, so to speak, back to Israel, and then so that I might dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. So all this results here that I just read is what the continual morning and evening regular sacrifice was a continual reminder of for the Israelites. And what I'm driving at is that John is saying the same thing here. The smoke, symbolically, in a symbolic sense, it's going up again. We're all delivered again, according to what I believe John is trying to say with this. So I don't know. Does that kind of go along with what you were calling for? Or?
Yeah, sure, a little bit. I think that let's see. Let me see. I want to make sure that we kind of get the heart of where a lot of other people want to know. Because I think for most people, it's just the imagery to them sounds like really rough. Let me ask you this. So, for example, this, right? You keep mentioning it's a worship sacrifice and those types of things, right? That's like kind of one of the themes.
Right.
So I want to put this challenge out there. This sounds like it's not worship. What would you say to someone who's saying like, okay, but it says like, and they'll be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and the presence of the lambs? And they would say is like, well, like, since when is there a type of punishing sacrifice?
Okay, so what I would for that what I would point to is that the sacrifices were not just an act of worship. A lot of times, that there are definitely elements of that I see is that a lot of times it was repentance. You would come with your sacrifice with a heart of repentance and come before the Lord and offer your sacrifice in order to be right with God in the Old Testament. It even says that people don't like to say that sacrifices bring forgiveness, but it says that directly numerous times in the Old Testament, that when a person brought the sacrifice, they could be forgiven by God when they offered the sacrifice. And it's probably not the sacrifice itself that brings the forgiveness, but it was repentance before the Lord that the sacrifice was a sign of. Okay, so that's worship. But the sacrifices were not just worship; they were also a symbol of God's judgment against sin. So God, the fire of God would or let's say symbolically, the fire of God and the anger of God would consume the sacrifice and not you. And you have the same theme with Jesus, that Jesus becomes the sacrifice. He bears the wrath of God in our place. He becomes our sacrifice and takes that on. And so we could see the same symbolism and meaning here in Revelations. If the wicked are a sacrifice, they have no atoning sacrifice to stand in their place. They have rejected Jesus, and they directly bear the wrath of God, just as Jesus did. They bear the wrath of God directly on themselves because they rejected Jesus, and they are consumed by the anger and the holiness of God. So we could understand then that the sacrifices, in some sense, are also, and I go into this in very much depth in the book, the sacrifices are also, or could also be understood as a prophecy about the judgment of God on those who do not have the atoning sacrifice of Jesus to stand in their place. So in this sense, we wouldn't be pointing only to worship in Revelation 14:11. We would be pointing to people who have no atoning sacrifice, and they become the sacrifice and bear the wrath that's against them. So I would point to there being an additional meaning in there that is not necessarily worship. In fact, it says in the Bible that God takes no pleasure in the death of the wicked. So whereas God may be pleased in some sense with somebody bringing a sacrifice in repentance and submission, God may be pleased with that I believe the Bible is saying there is no pleasure. God takes no pleasure in the death of the wicked. So whatever aspects of a sacrifice are here in Revelation 14:11, there's not God taking pleasure in this, but it's God's wrath being given out, which he does not want to do it. It says he takes no pleasure in the death of the wicked. God desires, and it also says God desires all men to be saved. So God is not wanting to do, I don't believe he's wanting to do this sacrifice, but his holiness and I believe requires that it happen, that God rid the world of evil, especially those who have rejected him and who would otherwise continue to go on to wreak havoc in the world and to bring the destruction that comes with sin. So, but there's more to this. There's more to show that this language of smoke is connected to sacrifice. So I mentioned the triangle of smoke, or the three passages.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to go to Jeremiah 51, and we're going to take a closer look. I already pointed out her judgment has reached the heaven and it rises to the clouds. That sounds like smoke. And then again, we have the sacrifice language here at the end of the passage. Okay, so in Jeremiah 51, he may be using symbolism or content from Job. So in Job 22, if we ask, well, here in Jeremiah 51, this is going up to heaven and it rises to the clouds. It almost sounds like smoke that's going up to God. And you'll see that there's that symbolism is used in the Old Testament, that the smoke of a sacrifice would go up to God. And in the symbolism, not literally, but it would go up to God, and God would be appeased by or satisfied by the smoke going up in a symbolic sense. So, and it sounds like that's what's happening here. The judgment has reached to heaven and it rises to the clouds. So if we go to Job 22, we see that God, in a symbolic sense, he's omnipresent, so he's probably not sitting up on some specific cloud, but it says God is God not in the height of heaven? Okay, look also at the highest stars. How high are they? But you say, what does God know? Can he judge through the thick darkness? Clouds are a hiding place for him so that he cannot see, and he walks on the vault of heaven. So we see this God being in the heavens and in the clouds. This might be what this is mentioning here. For judgment has reached to heaven and it rises to the clouds. This may be smoke going up to God like a sacrifice, the smoke of a sacrifice symbolically would, to appease his wrath. Okay? So, but it gets more specific. In Job 20, it tells us, or let's say it reuses this similar language, again, making it even more clear to us that this judgment reaching to heaven and rising to the clouds, that this is referring to the smoke. So let's look at Job 20. This is out of the Septuagint. It's a unique reading to the Septuagint, but I'll just let's say mention it, that the Septuagint, scholars know this, and you can see it. It's very easy to confirm. The Septuagint was, let's say, one of, if not the main Bible being used by New Testament Christians. Okay, and we can understand this because the quotations of the Old Testament that are found throughout the New Testament are very frequently not worded according to the Hebrew Bible, which our modern English translations of the Old Testament are based on. Many times the specific wording in the New Testament, in quotes of the Old Testament, is worded per the specific wording of the Septuagint. So we know the Septuagint was in wide use. The New Testament authors used it. And so if there is, let's say, a textual variant, or let's say a difference in the Septuagint, we can have some confidence that there's a high likelihood that the content of the Septuagint is valid and also pertinent or applicable to the New Testament. So this verse here is different from the Hebrew Bible. And I'd also, let's say, just mention that many times the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Septuagint will agree with one another and both disagree with the Masoretic text, which underlies our modern Hebrew Bibles. So it gives us even more reason to say, maybe we should look at the Septuagint and the Dead Sea Scrolls. And actually, that's what modern translators of the Bible many times do, is sometimes they will not translate per the Hebrew Bible. They'll insert a Septuagint or Dead Sea Scrolls reading into your modern translation. So, I mean, that's just a little aside to give you some confidence that why would you use the Septuagint? Okay. But here's what the Septuagint says. But the merriment of the wicked is a disastrous fall, and the joy of the lawless is destruction. Even if his gift should go up into the heavens, and his sacrifice should reach the clouds, for when he should imagine that now he has been established, then he shall be destroyed completely, and those who know him shall say, where is he? So this language of going up into the heavens and the clouds, it's directly connecting here the sacrifice, and this, I think I think it's pretty obvious here that this is the smoke of the sacrifice that's going up into the heavens and it's reaching the clouds. It's the same symbolism we see in the Old Testament of smoke going up from a sacrifice into the clouds symbolically to appease God. Okay, I mean, and again, that's just what for her judgment has reached to heaven and it rises to the clouds. And then here's the sacrifice language. So we're seeing even more of this Jeremiah 51, which is connected with Revelation 17 and 19, where the smoke is going up forever, this is explaining the smoke. The two passages are related. All of them are related. Revelation 14, Revelation 17 and 19, Isaiah 34, Jeremiah 51. They're all talking about the smoke. So this is giving us an education on what the smoke means. So it's reaching to the clouds in the heavens. And then again, Job gets real explicit, and Jeremiah may be quoting from this version, the Septuagint version of, well, not the Septuagint version, but from, let's say, an older Hebrew version, from which the Septuagint was translated from into Greek. Okay, so, say all that to say we have an explanation here of what it is that's going up into the clouds in Jeremiah 51 and in the rest of the smoke verses. It's gifts going up into heaven, it's a sacrifice reaching the clouds. But also, look, here again is destruction. This is very annihilationist type of language here. But so here's one example. I made the claim that in the Old Testament, the sacrificial system involves a symbolism of smoke that goes up to God from a sacrifice. So here's one example. There's a whole bunch. I give a lot of these in the book if you want to see them. But Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "Command the Israelites and say to them, you will be careful to present my offering, my food of my offerings made by fire, of a fragrance of appeasement to me at its appointed time. You will say to them, this is the offering made by fire that you will offer to Yahweh, 2 male lambs without defect in their first year, as a what? Continual burnt offering each day." So the smoke went up. So in order for God to smell the fragrance, symbolically speaking, the smoke would have to go up and go into God's nose. And, it says that actually directly. There's a verse, I showed it in the book, but it actually says it's going into God's nose. It uses the word nose, which is kind of funny. But so the symbolism is there. The sacrificial system involves smoke that went up to God. And I believe this is aligning with what we see in Revelations, and it's using sacrifice language and also pulling in the meaning of those sacrifices into Revelation. Okay, so here's something interesting, and this is kind of just a side shoot as far as the language of Jeremiah 51. I just pointed out that it says. Actually, I don't know if I covered this yet, but I want to point out a connection. This in Jeremiah 51, it says, "We applied healing to Babylon." Now, this is the passage we've been discussing. Jeremiah 51. It has the smoke. Judgment is reaching to heaven and it's rising to the clouds. Okay, it's the smoke that appears in Revelation and here in Jeremiah 51, Isaiah 34. Okay, so it says, "We applied healing to Babylon, but she was not healed. Abandon her and let's each go to his own country, for her judgment has reached to heaven and it rises to the clouds." Okay, and then I'm skipping verses. I'm going to some other content. "When they become heated up, I will serve them their banquet and make them drunk, so that they may rejoice and triumph and may sleep a perpetual sleep and not wake up, declares the Lord. I will bring them down like lambs to the slaughter, like rams together with male goats." So here you have the sacrifice. You have the smoke of the sacrifice, very likely. And the result of this is that they will sleep a perpetual sleep and not wake up. That sounds very annihilationist, like they're going to be just completely gone. But look at the way that the ancient Aramaic Targum translates this Hebrew Jeremiah 51 verse. Look what the ancient translator puts. Where we see sleep perpetual sleep and not wake up, the Targum translator puts die the second death and shall not live for the world to come. Now the Targums were ancient Aramaic translations that were translated into the common language of Israel, which was Aramaic during the time of Jesus. Okay, and these Aramaic translations were read in the synagogues to the common person, and the Aramaic translations would have been the Old Testament Bible that probably the biggest part of John's ancient audience would have been exposed to. Most people were illiterate and they couldn't read the Greek Bible or the Hebrew Bible. Probably a big portion of them were hearing these Aramaic translations. And this second death that's here is a really good chance, and I go more into the details in the book, but there's a really good chance that this second death that's mentioned here, that's inserted into Jeremiah 51, where we have this sleeping a perpetual sleep, there's a good chance that John's audience knew this phrase from the Targums. And this is the definition of it right here. There's a good chance that this is the definition of the second death right here from within the Targums. And it's very likely that John's ancient audience, when it says that the lake of fire is the second death, that he was referring to this definition. And there's more parts of it in other Targum verses, but this may be the definition right here. It's just not living. It's sleeping a perpetual sleep and not waking up. It's being judged so that your smoke rises to the heavens and into the clouds. It's being basically made to bear your own punishment, the wrath of God, to bear your own punishment because you have no sacrifice in your place. You become your own sacrifice and you sleep a perpetual sleep. You don't wake up. You die the second death and you don't live for the world to come. So this is just putting, let's say, some annihilationist content into what I'm saying here. So this connection to the sacrifice of the wicked, or let's say the description or the hints that the wicked are sacrificed, does not stop there, though. We've already seen it in Isaiah 34. I just showed it in Jeremiah 51. Job supports that. But when we get to the end of Revelation in 20, John uses this two names, Gog and Magog. Okay, and we can probably have a big debate about who these people are. Whether this is the Satan or who is this? Okay, but it's describing Gog and Magog in a big war and fire coming down from heaven and devouring them. And again, I assert that John is borrowing from the Old Testament over and over and over again, using words and phrases to point to Old Testament. So this is what he's pointing to. Okay. And you, son of man, prophesy against Gog and say, this is what the Lord God says. Behold, I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and I will send fire upon Magog. Look, fire came down from heaven and devoured them. I will send fire upon Magog and those who inhabit the coastlands in safety, and they will know that I am the Lord. So I'm skipping a few verses. But now, as for you, son of man, this is what the Lord God says. Say to every kind of bird and to every animal of the field, assemble and come gather from every direction to my sacrifice, which I'm going to sacrifice for you as a great sacrifice on the mountain of Israel. And you will eat flesh and drink blood. You will eat the flesh of warriors and drink the blood of the leaders of the earth, as though they were rams, lambs, goats, and bulls, all of them fattened livestock of Bashan. So you will eat fat until you are full and drink blood until you are drunk from my sacrifice, which I have sacrificed for you. So again, we have this just a repetition of John pointing over and over again to sacrifice language, which is applying the sacrifices to the wicked, saying that the wicked will be the sacrifice. Ezekiel 39, Isaiah 34, Jeremiah 51. So it just piles up. And this is just a few highlights. This is just a few highlights of John doing this. It happens more. Okay. And you can you can read the book. Like I said, it's free on my website, davidaaronbeatty.com. You can pick it up or you can buy it from Amazon, whichever, if you want a print version. So all this language that we're discussing illuminates the language of Revelation 14:11. Okay. So we have an explanation of this right here. The smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever. But we still don't, how is this? They have no rest day and night. That must mean that they're writhing in torment for eternity. Okay? That's what it sounds like. First thing to notice, though, and Adam pointed this, mentioned that he would like me to mention this, and I think it's a good thing to mention, is you have a contrast between the wicked having no rest day and night. And if you keep going into a couple verses, it says that those who belong to the Lord, those who die in the Lord, they're going to have rest. So there's a contrast between the wicked and the righteous, the wicked not having rest and the righteous having rest. So I want to assert that here in Revelation 14:11, there's a special pointing phrase right here. It's what we mentioned before, ages, ages. That phrase, ages, ages, is only used in a limited number of verses in the Septuagint and in the Psalms. Okay? If you do an exhaustive search using, the biggest online database of ancient Greek literature, the only place you'll find that phrase, ages, ages, or age, age, is in the Septuagint and the Psalms. Okay? So maybe John is using the phrase here. And the phrase appears nowhere else in the New Testament. It's just in this one single verse right here. So maybe John is using that as a little cheeky way to point to those several Psalms. Okay, I'm not gonna go through all those Psalms here. We'd be here for another 2 hours. But
Yeah, let's not.
yeah, but I'll just show a couple of them, and I want to say that these Psalms are going to explain what no rest day and night means in Revelation 14:11. Okay, so remember, if you got to look these up, the Septuagint chapter numbers are off of the chapter numbers in your modern Bible by usually like one, like verse. Let's say chapter 37 might be chapter 36 in the Septuagint. It just depends on which translation of the Septuagint you're using. But if you go to look, just be aware of that. The chapter numbers might be off by one. So one of the chapters which has the age phrase in it is Psalm 22. Okay, so I'm reading a translation of the Hebrew version here. The phrase is found in the ancient Septuagint Greek version, but I think the connection still stands. Okay, so for the music director, upon the Igilith Hashalahar, however you pronounce that, a Psalm of David. My God, why have you forsaken me? Far from my... Now, this is Jesus. This is a prophecy of Jesus. Jesus quotes this from the cross. Okay, so he's on the cross and he's saying, God, why have you forsaken me? Far from my help are the words of my groaning. My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but I have no rest. And then it goes on, you see the prophecy of his garments being divided. They divide my garments among them, and they cast lots for my clothing. This is what happens to Jesus in the New Testament. For he has not despised nor scorned the suffering of the afflicted, nor has he hidden his face from him. But when he cried to him for help, he heard. So this is the end of the chapter where Jesus is rescued. Jesus dies, but in the end, he's raised from the dead and he's rescued. So God hears, Jesus cries out here, but then God eventually comes and rescues him. So all the prosperous of the earth will eat and worship. All those who go down to the dust will kneel before him, even he who cannot keep his soul alive. I just put this on here again because this is very annihilationist language that's showing up in this verse. But what I'm focusing on more is the similarity between this Revelation 14:11, no rest day and night. Sorry, I keep scrolling too much here. But the similarity between that no rest day and night and the passage which this phrase is probably pointing to, we see that Jesus is crying out day and night and he has no rest. He's not being delivered. God is letting him bear his wrath. Okay? So, is that what is happening in Revelation 14:11? Are the wicked being made to bear the wrath of God, just as Jesus did with no rest day and night, calling out for help on the cross? Is this a reference? I think it could be, but let's keep going. So another one of the Septuagint Psalms, which has the special phrase "ages, ages" from Revelation 14:11, is here Psalm 37. Okay, this is see this whole passage is very annihilationist type of content in it. It says, "Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for Him." So the exhortation to the righteous is to rest in God. Again, that's just that's right here in Revelations 14. The righteous will have rest. They will rest from their labors. So again, rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not get upset because of one who is successful in his way, because of the person who carries out wicked schemes. For evildoers will be eliminated, but those who wait for the Lord, they will inherit the land. Yet a little while, and the wicked person will be no more. And you will look carefully for his place, and he will not be there. But the wicked will perish, and the enemies of the Lord will be like the glory of the pastures. They vanish like smoke, they vanish away. For those blessed by him will inherit the land, but those cursed by him will be eliminated. Turn from evil and do good, so that you will dwell forever. For the Lord loves justice and does not abandon his godly ones. They are protected forever. But the descendants of the wicked will be eliminated. The righteous will inherit the land and dwell in it forever. Wait for the Lord and keep his way, and he will exalt you to inherit the land. When the wicked are eliminated, you will see it. I have seen a wicked, violent person spreading himself like a luxuriant tree in its native soil. Then he passed away, and behold, he was no more. I searched for him, but he could not be found. But wrongdoers will altogether be destroyed. The future of the wicked will be eliminated. That sounds a lot like the second death. The second death, not living in the world to come. The sleeping of perpetual sleep and never waking up. So this is one of the Psalms that is probably being pointed to with the special phrase from Revelation 14. So one more, and this is as far as I'll go. Okay, Psalm 132 again has the special phrase from Revelation 14. A song of ascents. Remember, Lord, in David's behalf, all his affliction, how he swore to the Lord and vowed to the mighty one of Jacob. I certainly will not enter my house, nor lie on my bed. I will not give sleep to my eyes or slumber to my eyelids. Here we have this rest or sleep thing coming up again. Until I find a place for the Lord, a dwelling place for the mighty one of Jacob. Arise, Lord, to your resting place, you in the ark of your strength. For the Lord has chosen Zion. He has desired it as his dwelling place. This is my resting place forever. Here I will dwell, for I have desired it. So we see like a picture here of I believe this is Jesus. He's taking up his place on the throne in Jerusalem to rule the world. It's his resting place forever. So Jesus cries out. He has no rest day and night. But then God ultimately rescues him and brings him to a place of rest. And this is the same thing that's promised for us in Revelation, the verse following Revelation 14. So they're going to rest. We are going to rest from our labors, just like Jesus. And this rest, if you study this, and I show this in the book, but if you study this concept of rest, it gets developed even further in the New Testament, where the rest is equated with salvation, with eschatological or end times going into God's physical kingdom on the earth, having rest. It gets developed much, much more, this concept of rest for the righteous. So is that what's being talked about here? Is that what John means, no rest day and night? He's pointing to several, potentially with this phrase, he's pointing to several Old Testament Greek Septuagint verses, which when we look at them also in the Hebrew, we see there's a concept of rest for the righteous, but not for the wicked, being brought up again. So I'm going to submit that this language in Revelation 14 is calling on the concept of salvation being rest and being brought into the kingdom. But the wicked, they may call out like Jesus did day and night for deliverance, but they don't receive it. They don't get it. They have no rest day and night. They're calling out for deliverance. They're not delivered. And ultimately they continue to not have rest endlessly because they do not have Jesus. So I'm going to submit that that's what John is using symbolism in both of these statements here to drive at that overall. The smoke going up represents deliverance and destruction of the wicked, and the opposite with the no rest day and night. And then you see it again here. So, and that's pretty much all I've got to cover directly. Adam, do you have any questions or anything that you might want to touch on real quick?
No, I think that that's a really good kind of stopping place because we can get into much deeper stuff potentially with other things. But I think that it just helps show that the point of the rest isn't literally just this idea of restlessness or whatnot. And I think not saying you were overlooking it by any means, but it's one of the other passages in Hebrews, right? When David is saying "Hey, have I not sworn that they shall not enter my rest?" you know and that's what God is saying, and it seems so apparent. It's clearly when God is using the term rest as a place that they shall enter, it can't just be referring to them being sleepless or being up all the time or something like that, but rather it has a much deeper theological connotation. And so
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
that that's
definitely,
exactly
it
what
gets
you're.
developed like crazy in the New Testament, um, for sure. So yeah, I mean, it just makes sense that John would reuse it from the Old Testament, and I mean, he wrote late, probably after his, Revelation was probably written after a lot of the other New Testament books. So
Mhm.
he may have also expected or thought that his audience would know the concept already from some of the New Testament writings too. Um, so, but yeah, so I just want to do just a minute of vision casting here. So
Yeah,
with
go
this
for it.
book, for me personally, like this topic of annihilationism and hell, um, it has a really powerful negative effect on a lot of people, believing in the traditional view of hell, where their loved ones or friends are going to be tormented for eternity. And this, I believe, really, it says it's the kindness of God that leads to repentance. And I've seen over and over and over again now just firsthand testimonies from people who said, I stayed away from Christianity for 20 years. Or they say, and then finally, when I learned about hell, that it's not forever, that I became a Christian. Or they say, I deconstructed from the faith, left, and then came back when I learned about conditional immortality or annihilationism. Or they say, I had severe depression and anxiety for a long time, trying to think through and to grapple with the concept of the traditional view of hell. So this is an important topic, and it needs to be preached on. It needs to be covered. It needs to be taught on in order to set people free from what I believe is a false uh, representation of the character of God. The traditional view of hell, I believe, is a false representation of the character of God. Um, and so this book is aimed at helping those people. And one thing that, if you guys wanted to help with this, um, doing a review of my book would be extremely helpful. Just to either get the free version and then put a review on Amazon where you normally shop, or even if you want the review to go around the world, if you buy the book first on Amazon, which I have it on a deep discount right now, probably won't be in 4 months when this video is still showing, but it's on deep discount. You can buy it, and then when you review it after buying it, your review will go all over the world. So this helps the distribution of the book. It gets it out there to people. So if anybody wants to help in that way, please consider reading and reviewing the book, and post an honest review, of course. And yeah, that'd be really helpful. And again, the website to get the free version, if you want that in a PDF, is just davidaaronbeaty.com right here. And there's also a link that I think Adam has put in the description for that too. So with that,
Mhm.
that's all I got. Adam, what you got? Anything left?
No, no, no. I think that's good. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting topic, and I mean, I'll just say, yeah, it is one that I prescribe to. I do hold to the annihilationist position, and I've done a couple debates on the topic, and so you guys can see those if you want some live action stuff. But I think that so I haven't finished it yet. I'll tell you that, David. But I have begun David's book. It is a little heady, but he did the work. He really wanted to show how these things connect, and he's done the work, and he's done it in multiple translations. And so, for any of you guys that are interested in the topic, and you want the really stringent work, theological work done and shown, yeah, check out the book, and yeah, leave a review. And for some people, they really get it. I think that especially for those that have been in those situations where they felt the sting, you could say, of eternal conscious torment, and then they felt the liberation. Like this is where they want to be. And thanks for coming and presenting and putting in the hard work, David. I know that it takes a tremendous amount of work, effort, and courage to complete a book and then get out there and promote it.
That's it.
So
Yep. Yeah,
yeah,
it is
guys,
hard
come
work.
check it out.
Yep, yep. I would say for those who decide to read it, Adam's right on the money. It's not an easy read. It's kind of heady. It's got just like this presentation I've done here. It's got a lot of details in it. Chapters 2 and 3 are a bit technical, but I have a glossary. Every word that has a glossary entry is underlined, and it has a superscript G for glossary. So as you're reading through, especially chapters 2 and 3, you can see which words that I've given some help for in the glossary that'll help you make it through. If you struggle with it, chapters 2 and 3 are really basic. All it means is there's two versions of Isaiah 34:10. Both are valid. Both were very likely accessible to John's ancient audience of Revelation. That's the whole point of those two chapters. So if you get slowed down there, just keep that in mind. You're just to get the basic idea, and then just keep trucking. And the rest of the book is it's not easy, but it's much more straightforward. So
There you go. Well, David, thanks for coming out, and yeah, we'll see you guys in the next stream.
all right, thanks a lot, Adam. Bye.